If the phrase problematic drug user and prolific and priority offender had been coined in the 60s, or in the 70s, or even in the early 80s, then both of those titles would have fitted me very admirably. Because I was an injecting drug user for 18 of my 20 problematic drug using years. And as a consequence of that, back in the day, there was no harm reduction advice about not sharing. Being also a prolific offender, I spent a lot of time in prison. And as you heard from Nat early on, I did a lot of sharing of injecting equipment in prison as well. I was fortunate in so much as that I got out of the whole business of using in 1983, just ahead of the HIV breaking epidemic, and was fortunate enough not to have contracted the virus, particularly with the very, very unsafe practices I was involved in. However, we'll get to, well, I did get in a minute. I had, about 4 years ago, a trapped kidney stone. It was trapped in my urinary tract, and it was causing me a devil of amount of pain. Anyone who's had kidney stones, I'm sure, will empathise with me completely. I went into hospital because the stones were too big to be bombarded by ultrasound, and they were too big for me to pass through my urine, and so I had to go and have them extracted, which I won't talk to you about the details of, but needless to say, the operation was successful. I was in the recovery room of a nameless hospital, because I'm sure that many, as I'm the only person I think who's not a doctor here, as many of you doctors will know, need to wait in the recovery room, and you've got to pee before they'll let you go home. So I was waiting for that grand moment to arrive when a young houseman came down to see me and said, Mr. Rutkowski, your operation has been very, very successful. We actually found 2 trapped stones in your urinary tract. We've removed both of them, you'll be very pleased to know. And from now on, you should be far more comfortable than you have been for some time. However, when we did your bloods, we found out you were hepatitis C positive. I suggest you go and see your doctor. Now, fortunately, I've been in the drugs field for a long time, not only as a punter, but also as a worker and as a manager, and I know a bit about hepatitis. But that was unknown to that houseman who announced to me that I was hepatitis C positive. So if there's anything to learn from that, it's to emphasise the fact that people need to be told in a rather more sensitive way about their status. Anyway, we won't dwell on that. I went to my doctor, I got a referral to my local hospital. I went along, saw the consultant, and very, very nice man. Really nice. Was quite happy for me to talk really about anything, and boy can I talk. For those people who know me, you'll know that 15 minutes is the biggest challenge about being up here, not telling you this, this story. He was really good. He gave me the list of 15 symptoms, which we've seen on the board today. And he introduced me to my clinical nurse specialist, who was absolutely fantastic. If there was ever a nurse that I've met in my life that I can genuinely say made a huge impact on me, it was her. And I've met a few nurses, and I've been in hospital a few times. I went along, got my pre-treatment counselling, and decided, yeah, okay, I'll start. However, I was about to start a new job, I'd just been appointed as the services manager for 6 drug services, and I thought it might be expedient to not start work immediately in that job and take on hepatitis C treatment. So I postponed the treatment for a month and started my new job. I went and picked up my first amount of drugs as per the suggestion of the consultant and clinical nurse specialist on a Friday. I started my ribavirin tablets on that morning, and I came to my first peg interferon injection on the Friday night at about 7:30. Now, I'd had friends that have had treatment, and I got a really good friend who'd had treatment. And I said, what's it like? You know, what's the deal with this? And he said, oh, I felt really depressed and very, very low when I started the treatment. He said, in fact, I had to get some additional support because I felt, you know, I wasn't going to cope with it. And I thought, well, I've got the constitution of an ox, that bothered me, a bit of depression. But I did remember all of these 15 symptoms that had been given to me as potentially things that might happen. My consultant assured me that I would never get all 15. Highly unlikely that you'll get more than maybe 3 or 4, Rick, he said. By 10 o'clock that night, I was yawning into the big white telephone at a rate of knots. I could not stop vomiting. I vomited all night, I vomited through the next day, I vomited through Sunday. I arrived on Monday, I was unable to get out of bed, I felt so dreadful. I couldn't work, I had to phone in sick. On the Tuesday morning I woke up, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck still, I could not function at all. I went back to work on the Wednesday, which was really quite a compromise as far as I was concerned. But I was in a new job, I didn't want to let the side down, and also I wanted to pass my probationary period, quite frankly. So I couldn't wait for Friday to come round again, as you can imagine. Friday was now the highlight of my week. Oh, great, good, it's getting near that time now, you know, about 7 o'clock in the evening, let's have another go. So I took the next injection, and lo and behold, I started throwing up again. This time, I only had about 2 days vomiting, though. I thought that it was probably, you know, going to get better. It did get better, except for it got different. I started to develop eczema. I had a dreadful rash on my stomach. I was fatigued the whole time. I was still holding down a job. I was having to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to travel from West London to East London to do my job. And it was not very long before it really dawned on me that hepatitis C treatment is a real pain in the butt.